The meeting will come to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Anarino?
Here.
Border?
Here.
Kane?
Here.
Khan?
Here.
Smolka?
Here.
Shupai?
Here.
Long?
Here.
Thank you. The mission of School District 15 is to produce world-class leaders by building a connected learning community. Dr. Thompson?
This evening, we're going to be led in the pledge by some students from Kimball Hill Elementary School, and I'd like to ask the principal, Tracy Roble, to come up and introduce her students, then let them lead us in the pledge.
President Shupai, Dr. Thompson, members of the board, and guests. I am honored to have with me tonight two students who are members of two Kimball Hill student leader groups, the Respectables and the Principals Leaders. These groups often begin with the end in mind and put first things first as they analyze our PBIS data to determine and create our cool tools, plan service projects, student assemblies, and even a PBIS celebration. I am pleased to introduce to you Isaac and Nick.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nick, congratulations. Thank you for coming. Keep up the leadership at Kimball Hill. Isaac, congratulations. Thank you for coming. Please. At this time, we'll move into my section, and we'll start with student recognition. I'd like to ask Dr. Meg Schnorr to come up and lead us with the recognition at the end of the year. Last chance we get to do it before the summer break.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. President Shupai, members of the Board of Education, distinguished guests, it's my honor to bring for what is, for most of you, your first student recognition as board members of the Board of Education for District 15. And we have a lot of students out in the hallway. You wouldn't know it because they're being really good. They're being super quiet. But we are going to start with recognizing students who represented their schools at most of them, at both the regional and the state science fair. So I'm going to ask them to come in, and they're going to line up in front of you so that they can get their picture taken, and then as I call off their name, they're going to raise their hands so that you know who they are and what awards they received. Come on in, guys. They were pretty happy that they didn't have to say anything. All right, you know what? Yep, just line up here. We'll make a couple lines because they're going to want to take your picture, and so are moms and dads and everybody who's here to see you. And these are our junior scientists, everyone. Maybe we can start making a second row a little bit. There you go. And we also have their teacher sponsors with us tonight. So the Illinois Junior Academy of Science and Engineering Fair, we had regional and state recognized students. First, from Winston Campus Junior High, who were alternates at the state, Uma Patel and Ella Sobek, are 7th grade students from Winston Campus Junior High, and they were gold medalists at regionals and silver at state. And we're going to hold our applause until I get through all the names because there are several. The following were gold medalists at regionals, and then I'm also going to add on what they received at state. Erin Kirsten, 7th grader at Carl Sandburg, did which brand of antacid is most effective, and she earned gold at state. Nick Tater is an 8th grade student at Sunling, and he did the effect of cannon size on a projectile's distance, and he won a bronze at state. Ohas Dunbray and Caitlin Ma, 8th grade students at Sunling. Their project was called Does Familiarity to Words Affect the Human Brain's Trust? Sounds very interesting. They earned a gold at state. Colin Bertrand and Benjamin Williams, 7th graders at Winston campus, did Watts, as in wattage, What's My Food? And they earned a bronze at state. Sarah Kerp and Rebecca Danielchek earned a gold at state for their project, which was called Hot or Not, and they are 8th graders at Winston Campus Junior High. Jane Spencer and Coraline Johnson, 7th grade students at Sunling, did the effect of smell on taste. They also, in addition to receiving gold at state, received a Broadcom Masters Award for placing in the top 10% of all regional middle school projects. Yavna Sakti, 7th grade student at Sunling. Her project was called, the project was called The Effect of Different Soda on Corrosion. Also received the Broadcom Masters Award for placing in the top 10%. Also earned a gold award at state. Pranav Pillai, 7th grade student at Sunling, did the effect of propeller design on efficiency and won a silver at state. It was also recognized as the best in aerospace category at the regional fair. Caleb Reed, an 8th grade student at Plum Grove Junior High, did Does surface area of a fin on a bottle rocket affect its distance? He received a gold at state as well as a special award for originality and innovation. Nethra S. and Emily D., 7th grade students at Plum Grove, did the effect of biopesticides versus chemical pesticides on crops and earned gold at state. Shravan A. and Madhav P. at Plum Grove Junior High, both 7th grade students, did Does temperature affect the viscosity of motor oil? And they also received the Broadcom Award in addition to their gold award at state. Prashnath R., a 7th grade student at Plum Grove, did AA battery for high-use applications and won a gold at the state fair. Justin Chen, 8th grade at Plum Grove, for Hold Your Breath, earned a silver award. And Arvind Kumar, 7th grade at Plum Grove, earned a special award for science fair project that addressed water pollution. And the science fair medalist sponsors, please raise your hands, teachers. A lot of work and time and effort with these students are what resulted in what we have with our students earning such high awards at both the regional and the state fairs. At Carl Sandburg, Mr. Stevenson. At Plum Grove, Anna Kamath. At Sunling, Chris Lucht. And at Winston Campus Junior High, Pranita Narichanya. Sorry, I know that I probably butchered some of these names. Please join me in congratulating all of these students.
I know you put in a lot of effort. We're really proud of you and impressed with the efforts and the accomplishments you had. The Board of Education thanks you for coming tonight, and they were happy to recognize you. And they've got a little light-up pen here for you, and maybe since you're a scientist, you can figure out how it works. Congratulations. Congratulations. Thank you for coming. Congratulations. Thanks for all the hard work. Thanks for coming. Thank you for coming. Congratulations. Good job. Congratulations. Thank you. Nice job. Good work. Thank you. Good job. Keep up the good work. Congratulations. Great. Congratulations. Thank you for coming. Congratulations. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much. Good job. We'll send them. Anna, choose off. Anna, come here.
Oh, no, I think they're all new.
Okay, next up, if the students for UV the chemist could come into the boardroom. Okay, and we have 3 students this evening who participated in the UB the Chemist competition, which is a challenge that is a regional challenge for 8th grade students. And from Plum Grove, we have Shreya S., who is a top 10 finisher, Gavin McCarthy Gavin M. from Plum Grove, who is a top 10 finisher, and Gabe C. from Plum Grove, who was 2nd place and a state finalist in UB the Chemist. And the UB the Chemist challenge sponsor is Amy Muller, from Plum Grove Junior High. Please congratulate me join me in congratulating these students.
Good job. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Okay, next up is the Math Counts Team Achievements. Raise your hand when I say your name. From Plum Grove Junior High School, we had a 1st place finish at the chapter competition, which was sponsored by Minerva Milford, coached by Mark Jang and Dr. Krish Revelary. The Plum Grove team members are 8th grade students Stella C., Angelina Z., and Brandon P. And 7th grade students, Ji-Wei J. Is Ji-Wei here? Okay. The Mary and Jordan team, which was coached by Dr. Revelary and Mr. Liu, had 2 students who listed in the top 25% list overall, and they are Thomas L., Claire S., Garv K., Aurelian L., and please join me in congratulating our Math Counts competition students. Okay, you guys can go over and shake hands with Dr. Thompson.
Did we announce everybody's name?
Did I miss someone? Okay. Okay, we're on math.
Help her out.
Okay, wait a second. Are you Math Counts or are you Illinois Math League? Math Counts. Why don't you tell everybody your first name and your last initial?
Okay, my name is Jens L.
Okay.
And my name is Andrew D.
I'm Thomas L.
Okay.
Claire S.
Okay, we already got you guys. Okay, which schools are you guys from?
I'm from Mary
Mary Jordan.
and I'm from Pleasant Hill.
Okay, I'm so sorry that we missed your names on the list. Thank you for letting us know.
Congratulations. Good job. Thanks for coming tonight. Keep up the good work. Congratulations.
Illinois Math League.
For coming tonight.
Last but not least, I think we have our largest group of the evening, the Illinois Math League Team Achievements. You guys can start making a line, just like all the rest of them did. I think we've seen it, some of these folks twice. Very excited. This is a big group, very impressive. Hey, you're back. Is this everybody, Mrs. Garb? Okay. This is everybody that we have here tonight, but there are a lot of students on the list, so when I say your first name and your last initial, raise your hand so that everybody knows who you are. We had 79 schools who competed in the Illinois Math League competition, and Winston Campus Elementary School scored 22nd place out of those 79, and were sponsored by Beth Etchingham. Marion Jordan Elementary School scored 13th and were sponsored by Jennifer Clark. Teachers, you got to raise your hands too. Okay. Let's see. The members of the Marion Jordan team are Thomas L., Garv K., Jens L., Andrew Q., and Rohan K. Okay, and we'll hold applause until everybody's done. From Hunting Ridge Elementary School, which scored 10th place overall and sponsored by Sonia Nilsson, they scored 10th place. We don't have specific students noted, but Central Road Elementary School scored 3rd place and is sponsored by Ms. Lynn Gerd. Pleasant Hill Elementary School, first place, sponsored by Risa Cohen. And the 7th grade team achievements where 68 schools competed was Winston Campus Junior High was 22nd place in a tie, sponsored by Ralph Beneziak. Plum Grove Junior High, first place, sponsored by Minerva Milford. 8th grade team achievements, in which 70 schools competed, Plum Grove Junior High took 12th place. So very impressive. And we also have some individual achievements at 6th grade for Illinois Math League individual achievements. At 6th grade for individual achievements, a 19th place and a tie was Joey H. from Central Road. At 19th place and a tie was Sammy S. from Pleasant Hill. At 19th place and a tie was Sundaria, thank you, S. from Central Road. I'm sorry. I'll do better next time. 19th place and a tie was Jason S. from Pleasant Hill. 19th place and a tie, Casey T. from Central Road. 11th place tie was Joey J. from Pleasant Hill. 11th place and a tie was Luke Z. from Pleasant Hill. 3rd place in a tie, Andrew D., also from Pleasant Hill. And 3rd place in a tie was Calvin F. from Central Road. 7th grade individual achievements, 19th place, Eva K. from Plum Grove. 19th place, Garrick K., also from Plum Grove. 19th place, Kelly W. from Plum Grove. 14th place, Madhav P. from Plum Grove. 1st place, in a tie, Sanjeev D. from Plum Grove. 1st place in a tie, Z-Way J. from Plum Grove. And last but not least, 8th grade individual achievements. 9th place, Stella C. from Plum Grove. And another 9th place, Brandon P. from Plum Grove. And 8th place, Angelina Z. from Plum Grove. Please join me in congratulating this group of scholars. Did we get everybody?
We're going to jump one of my items, and we're going to go now to a report from our Community Engagement Planning Committee co-chairs. The Community Engagement Planning Committee was established to bring together community members to try to plan for ways to engage the community and to elicit from them what their priorities were, what their values are, and what the direction the community would like to see the district working towards in the future. And we had two wonderful people that applied that volunteered to be the co-chairs, and they have led this whole process. There's not been any administration there, and they've planned it, run it, and dedicated a lot of time and energy to this process, and I just want to thank them before they begin for all the work that they've done. So Matt and Lavanya are here to tell us about their process, to share with you that, and to talk about next steps.
Members of the board, Dr. Thompson, thank you. Good evening. My name is Matt Bickle.
Lavanya Tyagarajan, good evening.
And we have the distinct pleasure to represent the Community Engagement Committee. As you are aware, hopefully, the committee was formed at the direction of the board late last year. And at that time, an open invitation was extended to community members who were interested in participating in the development of a process for enhancing community engagement. As co-chairs, Lavanya and myself made a decision that inclusiveness was very important. And as a result, a total of 45 candidates were invited to come together to form this committee. And we held our first meeting in January of this year. Since that time, we've had 4 meetings as a full committee, and we've also created 5 subgroups that have taken on identifying and developing various engagement strategies. So who exactly is the Community Engagement Committee? Well, we believe that we are a diverse group made up of parents, homeowners, residents, retirees, and business owners. We have representation from many of the communities and most of the schools that make up the whole CCSD 15 community. Collectively, we share a passionate interest in seeing the very best public education provided in the safest environments for all children attending CCSD 15 schools, and also a passion for seeing that accomplished in a fiscally responsible cost to the taxpayers of Palatine, Inverness, Rolling Meadows, Hoffman Estates, Schaumburg, and Arlington Heights. Our primary objective was to build and improve conduits for communication between the community and the school district, and to ensure that all CCSD 15 residents are provided with an opportunity to hear and be heard. And finally, we believe that a school district is an important part of the fabric of its community, and that it benefits from both solid leadership as well as an engaged community.
Thanks, Matt. So why is engagement important, right? So research has proved that there's a direct correlation between a higher engaged community to greater results produced by a student in both academics and in life. So engagement also would open up a bidirectional communication between the district and the residents to understand each other's needs and priorities and work collaboratively to achieve positive results. So what are we doing? Our goal is to work on this engagement, expand communication between the board, the administration, and the community, and make it a sustainable and an ongoing process. And reach out to various members of the community, as Matt indicated, through the ways in which we can get the best information possible. Moving on to what we have done so far. So, as Matt mentioned, about 45 team members met 4 or 5 times, and first we started to identify who our stakeholders are, who are the residents of the community, and what should be the targeted approach to get their attention. It could be social media for some, it could be paper flyers for some others, it could be emails. So we brainstormed to identify the target groups, and the subcommittees that we formed are working on targeted communication to each of these groups. So we expanded on or promoted the creation of this committee via flyers, online, and through emails, social media, so that there's a promotion of or awareness of this committee. We created a Facebook page that is monitored and in an effort to engage on the social media presence, and we have engaged by posting relevant articles and engaging surveys to get the pulse of what the community is leaning towards. What are the hot topics? What are the things that they want to hear about? So we've had 2 surveys go out, and we'll be talking about their results shortly. We've identified homeowner association within the district, the lead contacts of these associations who we're in touch with, PTA groups whom we have established communication with, church groups, preschools, any medium through which we can reach out to the various stakeholders, retirement communities, through print media. So all and every way in which we can reach out to the community.
At this point in our process, we thought that it was important to come to the board and provide an update on what we've done so far, as well as to put forward some recommended next steps for continuing the momentum of our initial effort. The first recommendation is the facilitation of a series of town hall meetings. Using the context and the conduits that we've developed, as well as some of the initial feedback that we've received, we'd like to recommend that the district host along with the committee, 2 to 4 town hall meetings to give the district leadership an opportunity to engage with the community on a number of pre-identified subjects. The content would be planned by the board and administration and would provide community members with a chance to provide feedback. At the same time, we would encourage that these could be hosted virtually, perhaps something like a Facebook Live, to allow for greater accessibility of the community to hear the message. Our second recommendation is the development and administration of a community-wide survey. We started early on with the idea of a survey and then spent a lot of time as a committee dialoguing about how surveys may not be necessarily the best tool for engagement, but we do feel that they could be an effective tool for collecting information and benchmarking how the community feels the district is performing in various areas, thus informing other community engagement strategies. The third recommendation would be for this committee to continue its efforts to gather community contacts and information regarding the needs and priorities that the community feels with regards to the district. The effort, truthfully, has been slow developing so far. It's a big task to take on developing these communication conduits. But it's been nurtured by several passionate members, and there's definite momentum building as the word spreads about our community's mission. Finally, we're recommending that this committee continue as we move forward. We believe that there may be some restructuring necessary going forward. Obviously, a group of 45 is probably too big as we move forward into maintenance mode. But we do envision creating a smaller working group that would target specific issues, create a working calendar, continuing to gather and collect information through the different community groups that we've made contact with, and provide regular, perhaps quarterly reports to the board. We also believe that based on interest that we've received from the community for people wanting to become involved, that this might be an opportunity to explore reopening the application process and perhaps adding additional community members to the participation group. This presentation was actually developed primarily by one of the subgroups that I talked about and then reviewed with the entire committee and sort of consensus was gained. But our plan is to adapt this presentation so that it can be used in sharing a committee's efforts with other community groups as we continue our mission of getting out and seeking out those folks. As we meet with the community, we want to make them aware of the numerous mediums that they should expect to see communication both from the community and the district. And so, as Lavanya talked about, we've created a lot of those pathways for them to get information and be able to provide some of their feedback. We've got our email address and our Facebook page that's included in all of the promotional material that we've been sending out, and we have been gathering a number of emails and followers on social media. So with that, and on behalf of the entire committee, we do very much appreciate the opportunity that we've been granted to organize this committee and endeavor to build an engagement process. The work has been enriching, and we do appreciate the support of Dr. Thompson and the district staff in helping us with resources and providing space for us to meet, etc. And we look to continue to support the district however we best can. And with that, if there are any questions, we'd be happy to entertain them.
I do have a question. Can you describe, I guess, a little subjectively on the makeup demographically and geographically of the group as it sits right now? Where are they coming from in parts of the district? Age-wise, do we have early parents that have kids in school, retirees? Just speak a little bit to the makeup demographically and geographically currently. I guess that's probably a subjective question at this point, but if you could talk a little bit on that.
Yeah, absolutely. We, again, have definitely a wide spectrum age-wise. We have folks whose children yet are not in schools, and they are, they're interested in what the district might look like in the future as their kids come of age. We have parents whose children are currently District 15 students. We have parents whose kids have matriculated from District 15 and are in District 211 or one of the other high school districts or are in college already. And then we do have retirees, and we have folks that don't have any kids and haven't had any kids in the district at all. Again, we do have representation from several of the communities that the district serves. So we have folks from Hoffman Estates, Palatine, Rolling Meadows. I'm sure I'm missing some, but I know we
The
have.
majority of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Do you have any pockets that you see as a missing, where you would like to get more engagement but don't have involvement currently?
Yeah, so in terms of the committee structure, we did talk about that early on. We discussed, is it necessary for the committee itself that's designing a process to be fully representative of the community, or is it just more important that we're actually getting out and finding the opportunities to talk to those folks? So certainly we don't represent every single pocket of the district, but we recognize that the district is a lot bigger than just one small area. So.
And
They did take everyone that applied, so.
Are you guys, I'm sorry.
The committee has been very conscious of that, so whenever we talk about where do we post this, or they've always thought of, okay, have you thought about this demographic, have you thought about, this?
Yeah, the pocket's more not about representation, just about a way,
Being
thinking
considerate.
of the format, but it sounds like you're being very inclusive of that.
That's actually one of my questions, was accessibility. In terms of the people that you've reached and who are following your page or liking, commenting, things like that, do you find that you are able to reach families without kids in the district? I think historically, we know that like 80% of this community is made up of families that don't have kids currently attending our schools, and they tend to be the hardest to reach because they're not already subscribing to D15 newsletters and getting contact from their school. Are you finding that you're able to reach a good number of those community members?
That's a great question. So that's why we try to target through different mediums. So the Facebook itself is, highly engaging in terms of active parents and, parents trying to get into the district. We do have, because the committee members also are, those kids who have graduated, so we do have some small representation, but that's what we thought of during the targeted communication, that how do we address those audience? So town halls maybe, or flyers, or through HOA. So those who may not be actively looking out for these messages through the email flyers, but ways to reach out to them to make sure they're involved.
Now, you had mentioned that you guys are looking at making the committee a little bit smaller, because right now I know you guys had accepted everybody onto it, so it was like 40-some people. So what do you guys see as being the optimal size of a committee like this to function most efficiently?
I can say that we've talked sort of at a high level that we think it would still be important to have representation from each one of the buildings, primarily for the idea of getting that geographical coverage, and then probably expanding it to a few at-large members beyond that. So I would say it's probably somewhere in the 10 to 12 person size, roughly.
Okay. And then would you two stay on then to sort of like be the mediators, or are you guys looking to step back, or?
I'll let Lavanya.
Yeah, I'll be stepping back and have Matt take over.
Okay.
Lavanya is, she's bought another house in another area, and she's, even though she said that she's stuck on to be a co-chair for the whole process, but now, when she moves to another community, she's going to let somebody else take over, so.
All right. Well,
I thought
congratulations on the
Yeah,
new
thank
house.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I thought the presentation was great. Looks like you've put a lot of time into it. I know you said you've done some raw surveys. I guess, again, anecdotally, what would you say, just from all the responses you're getting in terms of the top, one or two concerns that the public seems to have at this stage?
So it was interesting because we had surveys sent both in English and Spanish, and the top three were different for the surveys from English and Spanish surveys. It was a good representation. It is not. It's not the entire community, but out of the survey results we got in English survey, the top concern was full-day kindergarten, and then the class size, and then teacher qualifications. And in Hispanic, it was programs, gifted program, bilingual programs, and
Student academic progress. Yeah.
Progress, yeah. So it is interesting to see it's
Yeah.
different, but yeah.
No, it's to me, it's I guess gratifying to see that. I think that's a common
common thread that at least I've heard since I've been involved with the district. So some of those concerns have been there. It's nice to see how it breaks out. Like you said, that's an interesting breakdown, though.
I have to say that I love that you referred to it as developing sustainable and ongoing communication, because for me, good communication is always two-way, and it always has to be continuous. So if we're going to develop something that's viable and really valuable for the district, it's got to be sustainable and ongoing. So that was great. I have one other thing. Are the meetings open to anybody? Is it possible for any of us to pop into the next one, or how would that work?
Yeah, so our next meeting is actually not formally scheduled at this point, but yeah, we've had a few people sit in and sort of watch, not so much participate, but watch the meetings, so we would welcome the board.
So Matt and Lavanya, would you just tell us what you do for a living and about your children in the community?
Sure. Yeah, so I've been a Palatine resident for the last 7 years, and I work with Zurich North America as a program manager in the HR function. And two of my kids, Sadvi Swaminathan and Anish. Anish is 5-year-old, so he's in pre-kindergarten, so not into the District 15 yet. Sadvi has been attending Stuart Paddock for the last 4 years, kindergarten through 4th grade. She's currently a 4th grader. So my husband and I, and two kids.
And I have been a Palatine resident for 11 years. My two children, my daughter Celia is a 7th grader at Winston Junior High, and my son Cameron is a 3rd grader at Winston Elementary, and my wife is a program assistant at Winston Junior High in the special ed classroom as well, so we're all Winston. And I am an architect and a partner in an architectural engineering firm located here in Palatine.
Built many schools, by the way.
Yes.
Very modest, but I imagine you have a few of your committee members in the audience. Can we have them stand and be recognized?
Absolutely.
So I really want to thank you. It's excellent work you've done so far, and we're really excited about the prospects of engaging the community in a two-way, sustainable, long-term way. And so thank you for all your energies. Lavanya, wish you well in your community.
Thank you.
You're not moving because of the school district has full-day kindergarten where you're moving.
We just moved because we found the house we liked, so we loved. But yeah, it's set.
Well, I think I speak for the board. We'll look forward to more reports from you in the future. And this evening, the board is going to be appointing a chief communication officer, and we will make her available to help you as well. And she's going to be a fabulous resource to you.
Excellent. Thank you all
Thank you.
very
Thank you
much.
for the opportunity.
Okay, Dr. Barbini, would you and your colleagues come up and share with us the process for staffing?
Good evening, Dr. Thompson, President Shupai, and members of the Board of Education. This evening, I'm joined by two colleagues of mine who I have the good fortune to work with and learn from. Our Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, Sue Gehring, and our Director of Second Language Programs, Dr. Cheryl Wolfel. As I referenced, it's a pleasure to work with them. It's an honor, actually, and I do learn from them each day, and I believe that makes me a better person. And so we are going to be providing you with a fairly comprehensive overview of the process and some of the decision-making rules with respect to how District 15 allocates its resources to meet the needs of our students. And so we thought that we'd begin this conversation with a poignant quote from Walt Disney. And so everyone takes a moment to take a look at that. It basically reads, "Our greatest natural resource is in the minds of our children." And so as a parent and as an educator, I don't believe any truer words have been spoken. Our children are our greatest resource, not only here in District 15, but across the state, across the country, across the world. They truly are our future. And that's why the process of allocating resources to meet the needs of our students is so important, and it deserves the time that it's receiving this evening. Not only does it speak to District 15's core mission, but it also speaks to our district's beliefs, our district's values, how our district adheres to the law with respect to how we staff our second language learners, as well as how we staff and meet the needs of our students who are eligible to receive special education services under the Federal Law Individuals with Disability Education Act, otherwise known as IDEA. And we also recognize that it also carries with it a very significant implication on our operating budget. And so we do need to meet the needs of our students, but we have to do so as financial stewards. And so it's important that we balance that by being financially responsible. And so this evening, we're going to talk very briefly about our 10-year enrollment trends, and I'll handle that. We have one slide. Maybe we should have 10 or more because it's 10 plus years. But we'll also be talking about demographic trends, and that's where Dr. Wolfel will talk about how our community, is diverse and how it has changed. It's not changing, it's changed, and that diversity lends itself to our strength. Moving forward, I'll speak a little bit about general education staffing guidelines, otherwise known as class size targets that were established by the Board of Education. And then Dr. Wolfel will talk about English language learners and how, pursuant to the state and federal requirements, we allocate staff to meet the needs of students in that particular program area. And then Assistant Superintendent Gehring will talk about how we allocate staff to meet the needs of our special ed students. I'll also be talking about intra-district transfers. Several of you know about intra-district transfers already, but I do feel compelled to share some information about that because this is something that if we don't look at on a case-by-case basis, it will impact staffing. And so some time on that needs to occur. And then we're also going to talk about the guiding principles or parameters by which we make decisions. Above and beyond board class size targets and class size requirements associated with special ed and second language learning. So we'll do that. So that leads us to our enrollment trends. And I have to apologize. I feel like I'm at my optometrist and I'm taking a vision test with respect to that. And so this graph was shared this past October of 2016 to the school board. And each data point represents each year in the fall. And it is accessible on the Illinois State Board of Education's website or ISBE's website under the Fall Housing Report. So this is information that the district collected each year over the past 10 years, compiled it, sent it to the state. It's a requirement to do so, and then the state reviewed the information and then put it on their website. The blue line represents our students who are K-8, so kindergarten through 8th grade. That number last year, or actually this year, 2016-17, was 11,945 students. The line above that, the red line, represents our preschool students and kindergarten through 8th grade, so pre-K-8. That number, the red line number, represents 12,539 students. And so that means that the district serves approximately 594 preschool students, ages 3, 4, and 5. These are the littlest of the little people, and we do so in terms of serving them who are eligible for special education services as well as at-risk students through our partnership with an entity known as ECDEC, which utilizes building space throughout our district to serve at-risk students, to give them the skills, the pre-readiness skills that they need to be successful when they enter kindergarten and become our District 15 kids. And many, many, many of those ECDEC students have siblings who attend our schools. And so we've made an effort over the past several years, to align ECDEC programming closer to the home schools of the students who qualify for said program. So in terms of enrollment, when we look at the numbers of students in each class, in each school, in each of our 20 schools, we are governed in terms of making decisions by that, and this is an area where I'm primarily responsible, by the Board of Education class size targets in terms of education. And so the board target for kindergarten is 20. For grades 1 through 3, it's 24. For grades 4 through 6, it's 26, and then at our junior high schools, grades 7 through 8, we're looking at 28 students. And what does a target mean? A target is something that we aim for. We attempt to hit that target. But kids don't come in neat, orderly packages in each school, in each class, at each grade level, in each building. And so there are times where we are below the targets established here by the board. There are times that we're at those targets, and then there are times that we are over those targets. In the event that we are over a board target, we do several things, right? And it begins with conversations at the district office level, right, with the building principal and with the building principal and his or her staff. And it typically involves the allocation of additional paraprofessionals to serve and provide additional support into those classrooms. So we do have a separate paraprofessional allocation, and in those instances where you might have one grade level out of 5 grade levels that, you know, has higher than what is established in terms of the target, the building principal in conjunction with their staff makes a shared decision making, and typically those additional resources that currently exist in the building in the form of paraprofessionals go into those classes that have higher than board targets. So that's how we act and make decisions largely with respect to general education staffing. But there are some factors that we have to consider each year. And each year it's a little bit different. A factor to consider for 17-18 are the impact on our new housing developments along the Algonquin Road, Route 62 corridor. So we have on 62 out west, 62 in Ela, a rather large, I believe, 80 to 90 home subdivision. The buildings are occurring, so there are people that have already moved in, and we've seen some enrollment as a result of that in terms of Thomas Jefferson and Carl Sandburg, but we have a lot more building that's going on for some of those single-family homes there. And so that's something that is an unknown. We also have on the east on Route 62 by Quinton, by the Pizza Factory, we have an apartment complex that I think has about 180 to 200 units that are going in. Those are luxury apartments, and we are waiting to see what kind of impact that is. We don't know what that's going to be, but we are taking a look at that, and it's something that we keep a close eye on. The other thing that we look at, and I've coined this term, it's a bubble section. And those are sections that, could pop, meaning we might need to consider adding additional staff, or we might need to consider reducing staff. So here are 2 examples with respect to that. So, one of the programs that's going to be discussed later this evening is the Gifted and Talented program, and that serves kids in grades 3, 4, 5, and 6 in District 15. And this is the time of the year when students who qualify for this fine program are identified and are communicated with respect to their parents in terms of eligibility in that program. Depending upon the numbers of students that qualify in any given school at any given grade level, that might impact staffing. So without naming the school, I can say that 2 schools were impacted in terms of a bubble section by virtue of the gifted selection process. One school had 12 students at a grade level, 12, 1, 2, qualify for the program. That led to reducing the number of sections at that school in 3rd grade from 3 sections to 2 sections. The school that had 7 students selected for the Gifted and Talented program received the similar type of consideration. Due to that number, we collapse sections. On the other side of the coin, we've had a few schools where we've had to immediately look at adding additional staff because at first grade we hit 30, 29, and 29 in 3 sections. So the decision was made to open up a 4th section. And so it's something that occurs on an ongoing basis, and that's going to be a repetitive, a recurrent theme with respect to this. Right now, we're talking about the process, but this is an ongoing effort that requires a team-based approach, and it requires continuous monitoring at the building and the district level because things do change. And we're a public school system. I mean, we can say we have enrollment night at this time in February and this time in July, but that doesn't stop parents, from enrolling their kids or leaving the district at any time in between and throughout, leading all the way up to the first day of school. So bubble sections is something that, we have to take a look at. And as many of you on your walking tours as a part of campaigning and earning your seats on the board learned, we do have, space limitations in our buildings. And so one such example of that is Willow Bend Elementary School. We have, over the course of the last 3 years that I've been here, seen a pretty steady increase in enrollment, at all grade levels in that particular building. And as a result of that, we've had to repurpose the computer lab that existed in there. We actually had to build out and into the LRC or library to get that additional classroom space. That was last year for this year. And then for next year, due to increases in enrollment, we've had to relocate 2 self-contained special ed programs that Sue will talk about later in her presentation in order to accommodate additional general ed sections that are needed at that particular building. So we are really in a position where we have to use our space. We have to think about it constantly. And at home, my wife is like, Matt, you need help with feng shui. But I'll tell you, at work, I've really learned, to look at spaces. But that's where I typically bring in Sue and Mike Adamczyk, and Craig Phillips and Cheryl. And that's where we typically are able to make decisions with the building principal about space. But that's also a factor. And then, as we'll discuss later, the intra-district transfer. And so with that being said, we're going to go to demographic trends, and this is where Dr. Cheryl Wolfel, our Director of Second Language Programs, will pick up the ball and run with it.
Hey, all right, so as Matt said, Palatine is not changing, it has changed. And this particular graph shows how it's changed over the last, since 1996. I've been here 18 years, and it's been a real change in our schools. So the first line up there, it talks about our minority, and you can see that it's on an upward trend. And that all this data here is taken from the Fall Housing Report. And what you need to know about Fall Housing is that it is taken, the state takes our data on September 30th of every year. So it's a point in time. So it goes, our demographics actually change almost on a weekly, daily basis. But this is a point in time. So on September 30th, what the minority says is that 60% of the households in Palatine report that English is not the language of the home. So only 40% are reporting that English is the language, the native language of the home. And then the next line up there is the green one, so that's our low income. It also is on an upward trend. The yellow line is the LEP, our limited English proficient, and it has been on a steady increase for several years, and even when it says it's 21% to 23% increase, doesn't sound like a lot percentage-wise, but that actually is around 238 students. That percent is that increase. And then
yes, and
Cheryl, could I just interrupt?
Yes, you may.
The slide is up. I heard you say that 60% figure was for households where English isn't spoken, but isn't it just minority? Isn't it if you're Asian or if you're Hispanic or if you're...
Right. I think the Fall Housing is run by the non-English homes.
No, I think it's just...
Okay.
It's just the minority you select, the ethnicity you select on your registration form, so...
So it would be, reporting non-white.
Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah, we
It's
go
60%
non-white.
non-Caucasian. So,
Yeah, that was gonna be my question.
yeah, I'm sorry. So I
It's
just want to
non-white.
clarify before
Yeah.
we left, but
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So we're
Thank you.
going to talk about special right
Yes,
now.
and the red line on the graph shows the special education percentage, the percentage of students who are eligible for special education services. And if you'll see that has remained virtually stable between 11 and 12% throughout these years that we've noted. And that is something to be celebrated by the district, because though our demographics have changed and many children move into our district with high risk factors, District 15 is able to provide interventions and supports and services to a wide range of students without them waiting to fail and becoming in need of special education services. So that is something that Palatine District 15 is very proud of, and that sets us apart from many other districts. We've been able to maintain a level special education eligibility percentage.
Is that trend as a general, when you look at most school districts, is that a rising trend typically?
Typically, your special education eligibility somewhat mirrors some of the at-risk factors, and at-risk factors would be perhaps minority and/or free and reduced lunch in particular, and second language learners. So the fact that this district has made a concerted effort over 10-plus years to provide general education interventions and meet students' needs before they're so discrepant from their peers that they require special education is really a benefit.
To kids in our pocketbook.
To kids and our pocketbook. That is true.
Okay, so we have, going back to the languages, we have Fall Housing reported 70 languages spoken in the district, and then we have another 6 languages that fall under other, which means that the state does not have a code for those languages. What's interesting about this is we have 2 schools, Hunting Ridge and Willow Bend, that have over 40 languages spoken in those schools. They're very, very diverse, very vibrant schools. Our top 5 languages are Spanish, Polish, Korean, Telugu, and Japanese. Okay, so some of our English terminology, English language terminology that we use, we provided the links so you can actually, read more about it there. But the TVE program is our Transitional Bilingual Education Program, and it falls under the state regs. That if you have 20 or more students who speak the same language and qualify for services in an attendance site, you are mandated a transitional bilingual education program. District 15 has mandated bilingual programs for Spanish, Polish, Telugu, Japanese, and Bulgarian.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, the mandate?
The mandate is 20 or more students of the same language who qualify for services. You're mandated a bilingual program in that attendance center.
In that school.
In that attendance center, right. In that school. Okay, so the TPI program, which also people call it ESL, but it's TPI under the state of Illinois, and it encompasses all the other languages. So if you have 19 or less a language for those children who qualify for services, then you're mandated an ESL program in those schools. We have ESL in every building, and we have TBE Spanish in 10. We have Polish in 2, Telugu in 1, Japanese in 1, and Bulgarian in 1. So the term EL, ELL, LEP, we gave you what they mean, but they actually all mean the same thing. The federal government still uses LEP. ISBE uses ELL, and then now they've converted to EL. So you'll see all of those, and they all mean English language learners.
So how's that for some alphabet soup, Cheryl?
I know, we're just going to change with the flow. Access is our annual test that's mandated by the state that we give to all second language learners in the program and all parent refusals. And the state has set the cut scores about who exits the program, so we have no say over that. They either meet the cuts or they don't, and I'll talk a little bit more about the cuts in another slide. And then they're exited from the program per the state. And then the WIDA standards are what govern the bilingual and ESL programs. They're developed, they're standards like, they're aligned with the Common Core, but they're on language proficiency standards. Okay, so how do you qualify? The eligibility for services, the state has set out the criteria. It stems from the home language survey that every parent is required to fill out on registration. And if they indicate a language other than English is spoken in the home, we are required to give the test. And they mandate the test, what the test is, and they mandate the scores. So you either make the cut, you don't make the cut, you're in or you're out. The duration of services, the state requires that we at least service for at least 3 years. And if we have students that exit before the 3-year mark, we have to obtain parent permission to exit those students. Other than that, they can exit and still stay in the program. They're not coded LEP anymore, but they still must receive services. And exiting the program, it's on the access test. The state sets the criteria at a 5.0 composite, 4.2 reading, 4.2 writing. And this year affected every school district in the state. They did not change the cut scores, but they changed the scale scores to get to the cut scores. So what that meant is that students had to get more right to receive the same proficiency level. So every district in the state was impacted because you didn't exit as many children as you would have in the past.
A quick question. How often do they generally change the standards for the access test?
That's a very good question. Lately, they've been changing, it was a couple years ago. They
The slide will show that.
Yeah, and so then you can see on this slide, because we start, the yellow says our exits, and you see where we are there, it goes up, it goes up, it goes up, we're on a trend, they change, and then we drop, right? And then we go up, and then they change. And so this year, it'll be lower, because they changed again.
So then there was a change in 2013-14,
Yeah,
and then there'll be a
yeah.
change for 17-18.
Yes. Yeah, the 16-17.
16-17.
16-17, there'll be another change.
Okay, now, one quick question on the duration of services. Did you say that the parents have the option to keep their children in the program, even though
Parents
they
always have right of refusal, so parents can always refuse the program. And then we
refuse the
don't-
program, not keep them in the program?
And then if they exit, say, we had second graders exit. So now we have to go to those parents and say, you know what, your child exited, but the parents have the right, well, I get one more year. You have to service one more year, because the state mandates at least 3 years of services.
Okay, so they get at least 3 years. So in other words, if they seem like they're proficient enough after 2 years, the parents can say, I want my child to stay in it for another year.
If they met the criteria, yes, yeah. Now, we've already had parents call, their children exit, and they said, we want them to stay in bilingual another year. And they have that right if they've only been in for 2 years.
Okay, but if it's a third year, then they just move them into the
And
mainstream.
if it's a third year, then we can exit. The other end of that is that if a child is in for more than 3 years, then we need parent permission to keep them in the program. So there's just a lot of paperwork going back and forth.
Okay.
We rarely have a parent that takes their child out. Most everybody signs a 3-year letter.
Okay, thanks.
Dr. Wolfel, if a child qualifies to exit the program and the parent chooses to keep them in the program, does that mean they go back into the full ELL classwork? Let's say it's a Spanish speaking, or do they get inclusion in English speaking and then separate services to support? How does that work?
Usually what we do, the parents are asking for the self-contained bilingual in that case, so then we would keep them in a self-contained program because they do get Spanish and English in that program. They get both languages. If it's grades 3 or 4 and beyond, it would be a resource setting. And also, we would look at the access scores. If the access, for them to exit, it's going to be high. So we would be looking at all kinds of data to say to go back to the parents and say, okay, we can still service with ESL or bilingual, but you might want to consider this and this and this. So we look at a lot of data. It wouldn't just be one data point. Okay, this particular slide, what this is showing, this is the ELL enrollment, and this only deals with our ELL enrollment, not the entire district. The other graph that you saw in demographics was the entire district. This is only our EL enrollment. So in the fall, the blue is the fall. You can see every fall the enrollment goes up. Every January, the enrollment goes up. So when we start in fall, we start with a certain number of kids, and then by January, it has risen again because of enrollment. Then we exit. Here comes the exit, but then you can see that it goes back up in the fall greater than it was the previous fall. So we're on this trajectory where it's continually increasing, our ELL population. So that was it on that one. Okay, our delivery model. As it has been talked about before, we balance between being effective and efficient with the model that we run. So the benefits that we have of being effective is that we follow the research. The research is clear in that the development in the home language and English benefit a learner developing bilingual and bicultural learners. And efficient in that it helps us meet staffing requirements while complying with all of the regs that involve in how you service children. So we try to balance how to be effective, and we service over 900 Spanish-speaking, self-contained K-2 children. So there are a lot of children to service, and then they fall under, depending on their access scores, if they're 3.5 and under, they require full-time service. So we try to look at everything and see what's the best way to balance the staffing along with what's best for our kids. Then we have our resource and our ESL services are combined. We do a lot of co-teaching anymore where our bilingual and ESL teachers are co-teaching alongside a content teacher to provide the language instruction in the classroom, so we're not pulling out as much. Then the ISBE staffing requires that if our self-contained bilingual classroom, it has to be 90% of the average student-teacher ratio in that attendance site. So if the average kindergarten was 20, bilingual would be at 18. So that's a state reg. And then we use, for staffing our resource and our ESL classrooms, we use a 1 to 30 ratio. So 1 teacher to 30 children. Okay, so some of the factors now to consider for ELL is that this year we knew that access was going to, that it was going to change. But we also had the company that did the access. There were a lot of testing issues. We had a lot of times that the computers shut off, and so the kids, and repeatedly. So kids get frustrated when you're trying to take a test and the computers shut down. So we knew, and some of the kids cried, some of them shut their computers off, so we knew already that was going to be an issue. Then I just talked about the increased access scale scores. We are required to monitor through Title III, which is federal funding that we take. We were required to monitor 2 years after exit. So we have to watch the kids, and we're always watching data for every child. But if they are not doing well and we think the best thing is for them to come back into the program, we can take them back into the program during that 2-year period. And the enrollment trends, as we saw, are continuing to rise. And so ELL staffing is going to be an area that we need to consider.
And so I'd like to add that with respect to the access testing issues, that is an online test, correct, Cheryl?
Mm-hmm.
Were the issues that were experienced on the publisher or the access end, or was it based on district infrastructure and technology?
It wasn't district. It was definitely them. I mean, it was statewide. They would send out notices 2 or 3 times a day. The computers are down. We apologize. The computers are down. It was quite a ordeal.
And then in terms of what we typically experience in terms of access exits, what do we typically experience? And then due to some of the difficulties with respect to access testing that we just discussed, how many kids exited this year?
We had 91 children exit this year. Usually we have 480, 500 kids exit. So it was the scale scores were raised. And what they did, it was a good thing for kids because they aligned them to the Common Core and they aligned them to Park. So what they were finding is that ELL students were exiting too soon and they were not being successful in the classroom. So they raised the scores so that the kids had more of an opportunity to become more proficient in English so that they could compete at grade level.
With regard to the issues with the testing, were the kids allowed to take the tests again, or There was that 1 day, 2 day, 3 day?
Yeah,
and that was it?
they could, but some of them, the little ones, they just had enough. Yeah, yeah,
I'm
they could
assuming,
have.
and this is something we've seen across districts, right?
Across
Everyone having the
district,
same phenomenon?
Everybody got the same emails, yeah.
So what is the implication then if we didn't exit people at second grade, which is when we would normally exit someone who's had services for 3 years? What happens now for third grade? Does that mean we develop a new bilingual classroom in third grade that didn't exist previously?
No, kindergarten doesn't count. The state does not count kindergarten.
Okay.
So it's third grade. So, and we typically don't exit at first and second. There are very, very few children that exit at that. So it's our upper grades that was impacted a lot more.
But to answer your question, yes, if they didn't get exited from the ELL program, we have to provide a self-contained classroom for them that wasn't in existence before. And those are some of the most challenging teachers to find because there just aren't that many out there. So it has financial implications and it has human resource kind of implications.
So the idea of a self-contained classroom for the kids, like in 4th grade, 5th grade, does that occur at those higher grades, or in those situations, they're still part of the program, but they're immersed with
Right, and
all
we
the other
have
kids?
flexibility on service. We would definitely take a look at their access scores. So if the state mandates, it's probably going to be too much information, but the state mandates full-time services for anybody under a 3.5 composite access. And most of these children will have higher access scores than a 3.5, which means we can put them in a resource setting. So we have a lot. We look at a lot of the data. We look at our MAP scores. We look at the access. We look at, the F&P levels. We look at any kind of data to determine what kind of services a child needs. So we don't have self-contained at 4th, 5th, or 6th.
And you mentioned the 1 to 30 ratio. I mean, that seems a little high. Obviously, maybe that's because of the concerns you're mentioning, Scott, about not being able to get...
That was for the resource teacher. So kids are in a regular classroom with the regular classroom teacher, and they're assigned to her. But we have a resource teacher that will come into the classroom and help groups of kids, and they have a caseload of 30 kids that they look after, and they meet their needs and support.
Yes, they're
regular
going
classroom.
across different classrooms.
Yes.
Right. They work with,
Understood.
they're not assigned to one classroom, right.
Okay, and in the area of special education, you'll hear some similar terminology, but some different terminology from the ELL programming. In special education, Dr. Barbini mentioned the IDEA, the Individual with Disabilities Education Act, which is the federal guidelines and law under which all of our procedures and our programming falls. The state of Illinois, ISB, provides us with rules, regulations, and mandates as to how we're to implement the IDEA. So we follow the procedures of ISB, which is under the umbrella of the IDEA. One of the key factors for special education eligibility is identifying those students who have disabilities in our community, ages 3 years old through 15 for an elementary district. If we were a high school district, we would go up until their 22nd birthday. But for us, children become the responsibility of the high school at age 15 or when they graduate from 8th grade. So one of our key responsibilities is to do what is called child find, and child find is found within the IDEA. It requires us not only to respond to parents or teachers who may have concerns about students, but it actually requires the district to actively seek out children who may be living in our community with disabilities. So we certainly service all of the children who attend in our district who are in need of special education, but we also service the 3, 4, and 5-year-olds who aren't quite at the age of mandatory attendance yet. We also service children who attend the parochial and private schools that fall within the CCSD 15 boundaries. And there are some variances on the regulations as to how we service them. And we also service children who are homeschooled, whose parents identify and share concerns with them that having disabilities. So we do some outreach. We have to make sure that we are open and available at our schools to look at and consider any child who comes to us through a parent referral, a physician referral, a community agency referral, teacher referral, and go through a comprehensive evaluation process to determine if not only do they have a disability, but also do they have an educational need. So are they significantly discrepant from their peers? So that's a big component of the special education process. And the other component that's important when you talk about staffing is that students with disabilities are often served not only by a special education teacher, but they also have related services needs. And those are the things you've heard of related to speech and language services, social work, psychological services, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and those types of things. So when we talk special education staffing, we're talking about that whole cadre of staff members and support services for children. When we look at special education and a child is found to be eligible, our district is required, and all districts are required to provide a continuum of placement options. So that would be from the least restrictive or the least different than what a child would do with their peers to the most intensive, children who have really severe, profound disabilities. They're all our students, and we provide services for all of them. So this slide talks about the different types of continuation of services. And resource, you heard Dr. Wilful talk about resource. There's resource in ELL, and there's resource in special education. Those students attend general education classes with their peers, but they have resource special education teachers or speech therapists, et cetera, who infuse those services to them. Children might be pulled out in small groups, or the teachers push into the classroom and support the children there. As you move up the continuum, we also provide many, many different kinds of early childhood programming, again, because our children are our responsibility at their third birthday. So we begin a process as they approach their third birthday from community agencies so that the moment they turn 3, we have services in place for them, and we're mandated and required to do that and to report our compliance to the state. So we have a very active process at Conyers Learning Academy for those little bitty ones who are 2.5 moving into 3 years old. So we provide early childhood special education, and then our low incidence programs are programs for children who have disabilities that are pretty significant and profound. And one of the beauties of Palatine District 15 is that we serve our own kids in our own schools almost completely. We have a very tiny group of children who have to be served in other private settings outside. But because we're so large and we have so many children, we provide our own autism services. We have classrooms for children with significant medical disabilities. We have children on ventilators and tracheostomies, and children with severe, profound psychiatric needs. And we service almost all of them in our own school system. So those are considered low incidence programs. We also then have a public therapeutic day school at Conyers Learning Academy. Conyers is unique in the area. The main floor is all for preschoolers. Our little 3, 4, and 5-year-olds have a program on the main floor. And we say upstairs is our therapeutic day school. And those are students whose needs are so significant that being in the general education building, one of our other 19 buildings, is just overwhelming or too disruptive, either for them or for their peers. We have districts that contact me who want to tuition their children into our Conyers Learning Academy programs. And sometimes we do accept that, and there's a process by which we can do that if we have space. But Conyers Learning Academy as a public therapeutic day school is somewhat unique. And then we do have a very small group of students, usually between 15 and 25, depending on the year, whose needs are so unique that we don't have a program right here in one of our 20 buildings. And those students go to the private day schools, private therapeutic day schools that are ISB approved, so they have to meet criteria. And we have some students who do attend in surrounding communities private therapeutic day schools. But that is the full continuum. I guess one that's not up there that we don't have any students that we've placed, but there are residential settings as well. High schools tend to tap into the residential services a bit more than elementaries need to. But we do provide services in all of those types of settings.
And I think it speaks virtues. I mentioned earlier about how we allocate resources to meet the needs of kids. It demonstrates what we as a district believe and what we value. And the fact that we have approximately 20 or so students that needs exist, that their existing needs are such that, require a different placement other than the friendly confines of District 15 really speaks volumes of the commitment that past boards current boards have given us, as well as the dedication of our special education staff. They are a dedicated group of individuals that are working with the neediest of our kids. And I would make the plug, because I know Sue wouldn't. Please go out and visit John Conyers Learning Academy. It is truly a special place. It will equally break your heart, but in the same token, in terms of student needs, it'll also raise you up quite high in terms of the efforts that staff are doing on a daily basis to meet the needs of kids and the progress that those students make. It's truly a wonderful place, and I certainly don't mean to dismiss any of the low incidence programs that exist in other areas, but it's truly wonderful, and that wouldn't have been here in many ways without Sue's leadership and support of administration and boards leading up to this presentation this evening. Felt compelled to say that. Sorry, Sue.
It's okay. And one of the things that I say is I have one of the best jobs in the district, because I regularly get to see 3-year-olds, 10-year-olds, and 15-year-olds, and on any given day, I can interact with children at any of those age levels and visit the schools and programs and be working with their families. So it really is a blessing, and it's a treat. So. When we talk about staffing, I want to kind of guide you back to some of the requirements under which we make our decisions. And these are requirements set, again, by the State Board of Education. So these are class size limits. And for preschoolers, you can have a preschool class of 5 children, and these are preschoolers with disabilities. I want to make sure that's clear. These are preschoolers with disabilities. There can be 5 children with 1 teacher, or 10 children with a teacher and a paraprofessional. And we do staff our early childhood classrooms at the 10-to-2 ratio, and we found that to be successful for the majority of our children. When you look at the elementary grades, and you look at this particular chart on the far, as you look at the screen on the far left, it kind of is that continuum of increasing need. So when students spend 0 to 20% of their school day with special education services, we can have more students in those classrooms as you look across the graph. And as children increase in their need for special education services, the staffing ratio has to, there has to be fewer students per adult in those classrooms because of the intensity of their needs. And those are state guidelines, and we do adhere to those. As you've heard earlier, our district has children who move in throughout the year, so there is a process that if I get to April or May and I have to go to my 14th student in that one classroom, there's a deviation process that I can submit evidence to the state, and they have always granted a deviation to go up 1 more student when you're getting into the 4th quarter of the year and you're not going to add new classrooms at that point. So those are the state guidelines related to staffing. And then factors to consider for next year, as we've been working all year long to monitor our enrollment, sometimes we do have to shift our special education programs in response to growing enrollment at a school. And that's difficult for the students with special education because they're some of our most vulnerable children, so we work really hard not to do that. But we watched that need evolve throughout this school year, and we worked very incrementally with a plan for moving 2 classrooms out of Willow Bend into other types of programs for next year to make room for general education classes at Willow Bend, just because of the community and the needs that feed into Willow Bend. That does happen occasionally, and one of the things that we do is being aware of our staffing throughout the year. We knew that was coming and had ample time to carefully plan for that in a sensitive way for our students. Some of the other things that we do routinely in special education is that the services follow the students. So special education teachers and related service providers are very accustomed to being reassigned to different buildings and different programs from year to year if the student need requires that. So we are always watching that and then working through our teachers' communication processes with them so that they know why they're moving to a different building or why one school needs fewer speech pathologists but another one needs more. We work with reallocating that existing staff, and that's just part of what people are accustomed to because that's what it takes in order to meet the needs of the students. When we talk about caseload versus workload, that's just an important piece for you to know. The state requires school districts to have a special education workload plan. And that's because you can't count children by caseload to be an equivalent workload for a teacher. So for example, if you have your really, really needy students who need a lot of individualized attention, the workload for that teacher, they may only have 12 children on their caseload. Someone else may have 15 because the needs of those 15 children are a bit less. So that's kind of another factor that we look at as we make staffing decisions. And lastly, in special education, we are part of the interdistrict transfer process, and sometimes we look at if families are asking for a child to be transferred to a different district, we look at the implications for their special education services and work with those families to come up with a resolution, either remaining at their building by changing some services or granting an interdistrict transfer request if that is the best for that child. So we work hand in hand with parents on that. And then Dr. Barbini will kind of delve into interdistrict transfers a little bit more.
So I'd like to preface this by indicating that there's a lot more information about interdistrict transfers than what I'm going to be sharing this evening that exists on our district website on the administrative services section. There's information about procedures, there's the application form, and then there's even a friendly pamphlet that we have in English and Spanish, for interested parties, and we primarily keep those on hand at the district and building levels. And so interdistrict transfers, in a nutshell, what that means is a parent lives in student attendance center A with their children and wants their child or children to attend student or school attendance center B. And so there's a process by which we have to be able to address that. And historically, it has been an individual case-by-case determination made by one individual. And that fortunate individual was the Deputy Superintendent of Schools. And so when I came here 3 years ago, that was one of my many important responsibilities, and it was Dr. Garwood, his responsibility before me as my predecessor. And due to the fact that approximately 200 of these requests are made annually, in terms of also taking a look at this, and that these requests can be very emotional in nature. One of the things that, in working with Dr. Thompson, that we discussed was changing this to more of a team-based approach, because we really believe that none of us are as strong or as smart, especially with me, as smart as all of us. And so what happened was we went to a committee-based structure, and several interdistrict transfer committee members are actually here this evening. I'm on the committee, so is Dr. Wolfel, and so is Ms. Gehring. And then we also have Dr. Tom Edgar, our Executive Director of Assessment, Accountability, and Programs. So Tom, if you can raise your hand. As well as Mr. Tom Bramley, our Director of Transportation. And then Mr. Adam Palmer is recovering at home due to a surgical or a medical procedure and expected to make full recovery. And he's our Director of Personnel and Human Services. So I realized I probably divulged too much information, and I might be having a meeting with Personnel and Human Services about that. So I apologize. And so we went from an individual-based determination model to a team-based, and we researched several other districts in terms of their practices, and we arrived at our practice, which is outlined on the Administrative Services webpage. And so we've reviewed for this year approximately 200 requests, and if you factor in 11,945 students in K-5, that was the enrollment slide that I shared earlier, that's approximately 1.6% of our district population. And so as a committee...
What portion of those were approved?
I will have to get back to you on that, Board Member Border. Wow, that's a zinger. Glad that wasn't Final Jeopardy. Wasn't trying to stump you.
I have the same question, so send it to me.
All right, okay, no problem. We can do that.
You read my mind.
And so when we meet as a group to take a look at this team that meets, this interdistrict transfer committee, it does represent a multidisciplinary approach where people are coming at this in terms of student services and special ed, second language programs, gen ed, transportation, assessment, gifted and talented, etc. And what we look at is District 15, Board of Education class size targets, as well as those statutory requirements that Cheryl and Sue have already talked to you about this evening in second language and in special ed programs. We also evaluate the impact of each request in terms of what its impact would be on the sending and receiving schools, and we do consider input from sending and receiving school administrators. There are other factors, that we, look at as well, but those are primarily, the decision-making rules that we utilize in terms of making decisions, because the Intra-District Transfer Committee will not approve a request if doing so will result in increased staffing costs. So when we're looking, family A wants to go from student area B or A to B, what does that mean? And that's why it's important that Sue's there if it's a student that receives special ed services. We need to know what the impact would be on special ed caseload and workload, or if it's an ELL student, second language student, or a gen ed student, the same type of considerations occur. And so that's basically it. And that's part of the reason why, in terms of the final decision and communicating that decision to families, we do defer these decisions until largely a week or two before the start of each school year, because we do have a high degree of mobility in our district, and staffing and human resources does matter. So does meeting the needs of students. We have to start there, but we can't honor requests like this if it's going to increase, the bottom line. And so, we do let parents know that they need to cultivate additional options in the event that their requests aren't approved. And that's why President Shupai and Board Member Border, the question that you asked, what's the percentage that's approved or disapproved, that's why that's important. And so it is not uncommon also, and this is just a heads up, it's not uncommon for parents who've made these requests to contact school board members. And so we've talked about team, and I'm not going to talk more about that other than saying that what was presented this evening in terms of student services, special ed, and second language programs, things are really more complex than they seem in terms of meeting the needs of our students. And so it really is a shared responsibility for meeting the needs of students through the appropriate allocation of resources. And so that means that although Sue is primarily responsible for special ed, and Cheryl for second language, and myself for gen ed, we do question each other, all right? And members of cabinet who are a part of these staffing conversations. So Chief School Business Official, I got that one right, Mike Adamczyk, all right, Dr. Schnorr, our Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, and Dr. Edgar, all right, we do ask ourselves the tough questions, not just in our area of responsibility, but in a cross section in terms of our areas of responsibility, because the bottom line is we would rather ask questions for ourselves as a leadership team than be posed with the questions from the community or the school board in terms of resource allocation.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
When you are making decisions as to those placements, approving or not approving them, is there any sort of priority given to childcare situations or childcare needs?
Yes. And so the intra-district transfer process, what we learned in terms of studying other districts is that, childcare is certainly a consideration that we look at, and that is primarily directed just to the elementary level, and that's historically been the case here in District 15. But we have 6 categories by which families can request an inter-district transfer. The first one being a compelling safety or mental health situation. The second being a student, who's moved, the family moved within the district, but they're 5th graders and they want to finish their 6th grade experience, at the elementary school. The third group, deals with a student whose siblings been placed in a special ed or ELL program, and the families are requesting the kids to be intact at one location. And then we have, in terms of looking at the child care piece, I believe that's category 5. And so we consider requests as we receive them. The window started May 1, and it goes to the end of July for our existing families. And we look at and we sort and we go through category 1s first, then category 2, then category 3, and then category 4 in that particular order. So although childcare is something we consider, we do prioritize other categories above that. All right. Before we go on to parameters, we do make, as a team, we make every attempt to meet new or emerging student needs with existing staff. That is really, really important. So if we have an add somewhere, I'm asking for a corresponding reduction somewhere else, if we can consider that. And we do that individually as well. So that moves on to our process and planning meetings.
Yeah, and I'll talk a little bit about the student assignment process. We virtually begin the student assignment process for the next school year in October of the current year. So we started having these conversations at the central office level in October. We're looking at, in my department, my class sizes, my pending enrollment based on evaluations. Dr. Wolfel's looking at students who have moved in or trends that she's seeing. We're looking at, even in buildings, trends that have occurred in enrollment since between July and when the doors of the school open. So we start looking at central office at the current enrollment for the existing school year, and we watch for emerging trends for increases in class sizes or situations in which class sizes are decreasing. So we do that central office-wide, and then we begin, not long after that, having meetings with the building principals. Every building principal prepares a series of questions related to their class sizes, related to needs that may be beyond what numbers would reflect, looking at the space and facility usage in their building, and beginning shortly after Thanksgiving, we begin having meetings with each building principal to get a real feel for what those class sizes and trends in enrollment and program needs and facility use are looking at. So we are really beginning very shortly after the school year starts, planning for the coming year.
And so after we meet with all the individual principals and have all of those meetings, then we all come together as a central office staff. And in the sense of continuous improvement, we do a plus delta process about what worked well and what we need to improve on, so that we're getting prepared for the next year to start the staffing over again. So it's a continuous process in trying to improve what we do.
And speaking about that ongoing continuous process, we did have a staffing meeting today to talk about ELL students and their needs for next year as well, to demonstrate that continuous monitoring piece. And so, we have the end of the year. It's rapidly approaching. We typically take, a stop and a check at that point in terms of enrollment in our programs across the board. And then we also take another look after open enrollment in July, leading all the way up until the start of the school year. And I'll tell you what, our building principals are great advocates for their kids, their staff, their families, etc., and they will let any one of the three of us know if they believe that, that enrollment has changed and warrants, consideration for additional staffing. And that leads us to, once the process unfolds, etc., so we've thrown a lot of information out at you. We're going to continue to monitor and review this. We're going to give some preliminary staffing information regarding 17-18 to Mike Adamczyk, so he can include that in his FY18 budget presentation in June to the Board of Education. And then what will happen is in October of the year, so of October of 2017, I will be back up here with Cheryl and Sue, and then we will be presenting in totality, all right, what that staffing plan is going to look like. So we're going to continue to monitor. All right, things are more complex than they seem, but we are a team dedicated to meeting the needs of all of our kids and doing so in a balanced, fiscally responsible manner. Questions?
Dr. Remedy, the one thing I'd say is when you do that presentation, and you and I have had a number of exchanges over the last several years on this, but I think it'd be very valuable to relay that information relative to board targets at the class sizes. It's historically been done with sort of flagging the classes over 30 as opposed to highlighting some of the younger grades that are a deviation from the 24 in particular. So using something like a 10% over board target standard rather than a hard and fast 30, I think would give a better picture to the board in that presentation.
We'll certainly do that. I've talked to our stats person, Dr. Tom Edgar, and we are going to meet that need for information to provide a more global and perhaps more accurate or thorough view. So very open to continuously improving how we report so that you as a board can govern effectively.
Thanks. Now, with regards to space utilization, how do you guys manage that? I would assume you guys have numbers for all the schools and all the facilities.
Yes, we do. As a part of the principal checklist, and it's kind of their entrance ticket in terms of having those school-specific conversations with us at the central office, we do require them to do a facilities or space utilization activity whereby they have to take their floor plans and identify the use of every space in that building. And so we review and evaluate that, and we see if that matches up to what we know, the classes are in that particular building, and that's how we evaluate if we do have an increase in any particular area and it needs more space. If we have the space, we actually have the map there. If we don't, that's when what we've typically done is, if it's a student services piece, Sue and I will meet with Mike Adamchek, Tom Bramley, and Craig Phillips, who's our Director of Environmental Services, with that building principal to see first, is space existing in that building? Because we don't want to displace kids unless we absolutely have to, like we talked about with respect to Willow Bend. So it starts at that particular school, and if we can't resolve that realistically, then we start looking at space in other nearby schools for those types of special ed types of programs. And so we are jammed for space. Last 3 years, we've converted over 9 computer labs in our elementary schools into general education or special education or second language program spaces based on enrollment increases at those sites.
Okay, so looking at that, I guess the layout you have of all this available capacity, are you guys projecting what your future needs might be and whether or not we may need to put any additions or anything onto any of the schools? Is that something that you guys have looked out that far, or is that still in process?
Yeah, we haven't looked that far yet. I think that we analyze it on an annual basis, and we kind of keep our pulse on the trend of how much our enrollment is every year and what we anticipate going forward. But that's something we have yet to do.
Okay. And so for next year, we're only looking at, outside of that special ed program at Willow Bend, that we strategically over time work with the students and work with their parents and work with their staff to move. The only other program we're moving is our ACDEC pre-K at-risk program that's run by another entity from some of our schools, in order, to get them closer to their home schools, but then also to create space in at least one of those schools, Pleasant Hill, where there was a bubble section and we needed to increase the section. So that's the only program other than the special ed program that we're moving for next year.
Okay, thanks.
Frank, we did do an analysis of all the space based upon our current population and how much more space we need if we had full-day kindergarten. So we have done that, but we don't have long-term demographic projections that would tell us that the demographics are going to change significantly and that we would have to look at it, adding additions for the current structure of grade levels we have today.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Very thorough. A lot of information, and I know the board members are soaking it in, but thanks very much for everything you do. While they're leaving, I just want to remind you that we do know that there could be up to $1 million additional cost required if we increased our class or decreased our class sizes by 1 across the grade levels. So if we increased every class in every school by 1, the potential cost could be over $1 million in staffing that we have to hire. And of course, then that creates more need for space too. If you've got lower class sizes, you need more class space, you need more teachers, and the cost just for staffing could be over $1 million. So that's how significant it is. That's why Dr. Beanie takes it so seriously. So. Okay, moving on. Let's see if we can get through some of these things quickly. The board policy requires that I report to the board annually the status of the gifted programmings, and as you heard earlier, our gifted programming continues with the same structure it's had for many years in the past. The only thing that we've changed in the recent past is that we've tightened our guidelines for entrance, made them much more easy for parents to understand, and they used to be a little more gray, a little more flexible, and they really, I don't think, were fair. But Tom Edgar and his group have worked hard to make those much more clear, and identification is much easier today. So that's the only thing we've done in our gifted program. I provided you with some intergovernmental agreements and some joint programs that exist in the district. That's one of the policy requirements as well, to notify you of those. I can tell you that all those programs and joint agreements are operating well and serving the district in a good way. If you have any questions about any one of those, I'd be happy to tell you about those. Next item is negotiating team members. Do you want to talk about that now or in the committee representation?
We can talk about it now.
Okay.
So we are in the process, or beginning the process, or continuing the process of 3 collective bargaining arrangements moving forward. The first one, the TIE, from what I understand, is almost complete, and we're very close to an agreement. So we are not going to provide people for TIE. ESPA, we would like 2 volunteers to represent the school board for the ESPA negotiations.
So I'm going to volunteer for that.
Volunteer.
Beautiful. Thank you, Frank. Thanks, Anthony. And the last is SEIU. Again, we're looking for 2 volunteers.
I'll volunteer.
Thank you, Barb.
I will as well.
All right, Mike. So Frank and Anthony on ESPA, and Mike and Barb on SEIU.
So Lisa and Mike Adamczyk and Mike Louisi will be reaching out to the respective individuals that have volunteered. Thank you. And we'll be trying to work out a calendar for upcoming negotiation sessions that fit your schedule. Just a reminder, I sent some dates. The board has shown interest in having Barb Toney come to provide her staff development on starting out right as a team. And I've sent dates that she's provided me. The sooner you can get back to me that you have availability, I can schedule that with Barb before somebody else snatches it up. So if you have a chance, look at your calendars, and thanks to those who have sent it in. We also, the board shared an interest in having Mike Louisi come. He tried to do it before you were seated, but he's willing to come and talk about the legal aspects of being a board member, and we can certainly schedule that. We might want to wait until the summer when things slow down a little bit, but Mike will be around to give us some opportunities for that, but I will give you some dates in the near future for that. And the last item that I wanted to talk about tonight is that we've typically had a board administrative retreat in June. That's been a session where we've met usually from like 5 to 9, had dinner together, and then we've brainstormed as a large group what we wanted to work on for the upcoming school year. And the board decides then what are its priorities and what it charges me and my administration to accomplish in the upcoming year. So does the board have an interest in continuing that practice?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So again, I'll try to schedule a date that works for everybody, but it'll be sometime in June. Avoid vacations. And
June or July?
June is the typical time that it's occurred. And so we'll try to make it work for the majority of people. I'm not sure that it'll work for everybody, but maybe some people can participate long distance via phone or something, but I think they can also give their input beforehand. But it's been a very enjoyable process, and it's been productive. We've been able to get together and identify what the greatest areas of need are and what the board's interest in attacking are, and I think it'll be healthy, so I'll get that too. But that's the end of my section.
All right. I'll take it over. We'll move on to the reading and acceptance of minutes. May I have a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the following meeting of the Board of Education, April 26, 2017, Board of Education special meeting, and the April 26, 2017 Board of Education organizational special meeting as presented.
Second?
I second it.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Henry No.
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Khan.
Aye.
Smolka.
Aye.
Shupai.
Aye.
Wong.
Aye.
Motion carries. If there's anybody out in the audience that would like to address the board, if you begin to prepare these or turn them in, that would be wonderful. And we're not going to address just yet, but upcoming. Board discussion and reports. Item 17-510, committee representation. We'd like to talk about committees and representation. Already have done collective bargaining, but moving on to suggested committees, both in place and what we would like to look at as far as potential committees go. Shall I run through the existing first, and we'll assign people ownership and then move on to suggestions. Board member representative is needed for the 1-5 Foundation. And that, from what Dr. Thompson has indicated, 9 a.m. Wednesday morning, once a month. 1-5 Foundation?
I'll volunteer.
Thanks, Barb. IASB?
Yeah, that's something that I've done before. I can continue doing.
Perfect. Ed Red?
It's something I'd be interested in doing.
Perfect. Thanks, Rick. All right, we have an existing committee. Currently, there's a communications committee. I believe that committee is a superintendent's committee right now. I would like to discuss the opportunity to switch it to a board committee, at least for this first year, and treat it as an open meetings board type of committee. Does anybody have any input, thoughts?
I mean,
Everybody'd like to participate, so I think it's a good idea.
I mean, to me, it's something that was productive towards the end of this last board. I think we should continue doing it, and I'd be willing to stay on that committee.
Perfect. We would like one more person that would have some level of responsibility, but the remainder of us would take part.
I'll take that on.
All right, Mike. Thanks. One of the areas that was discussed as far as communications committee goes, if we were to have forums, a few a year with subject matter, then that could be some level of interactive. It is something we would like to look at beginning from an engagement and transparency standpoint. One suggestion that had come up was potentially having one of those forums be about curriculum. So I'd like to put that on the record. And then if anybody has any other ideas, whether board members or people in the room, if you've got some ideas or thoughts, please do submit them to us. And I would also ask that the Community Engagement Plan Committee, if they've gotten anything that's come in, if you would give those ideas over to, we would really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think there's some area there just from the community engagement group that it would probably make sense if we're giving presentations, it could fall into kind of what they're doing as well, that we should be able to work together. Right.
All right. Any potential committees?
Well, one committee that I thought about for some time and I think is a good idea is, I'm calling it the Equality Committee for lack of a better word. I mean, I thought that for a long time, I think, and from talking to the community, one of the major issues that the district's facing is this kind of achievement gap that we've talked about a lot over time, and to identify really the purpose of the committee would be to identify the gap, if there is one, statistically and whatnot, to try to identify those causes and to try to propose some solutions. It would be something that we're working with the administration. The way I thought about this is just that, we work with the administration. They have their own, experts and studies that they've done, and we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We should also engage with discussing these issues because they're complex. They're not just related to academics. They're related to sociology, they're related to social services, and so that we also take the time to bring in experts in the field as well and hear from them on what's the best way for us to handle what I think a lot of the community sees as an issue that is of highest importance to the district. I think, obviously the committee would kind of take on its own shape as time goes on, but it's really the idea that we're one district, we're united. There's people from all sorts of backgrounds here. We just saw the great presentation that shows the amazing diversity that this district has, and
with the hope of uniting all of our efforts to make sure that no kids are left behind, truly, I think that a committee like this would be great, so we can investigate and we can work with the experts and come up with some great proposals.
I agree. I agree, Zubair. I think it's definitely timely, and it's something that we could positively impact. Does anybody have an issue with setting it up as a superintendent's committee initially?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
All right, done.
All right.
Zubair, are you willing to participate?
No, I'm just kidding. No, of course.
Anybody else?
I would take that on too as well. I think that's of major interest, and I think that I would be happy to help lead that.
Excellent. Committee stuff done.
I think you missed finance.
Oh, that's right, I did. Finance, thanks, Dave. Finance Committee, Superintendent's Committee, that is currently on record right now, and we'll maintain it as such, two delegates.
I'd like to do that one.
Perfect.
I'll be a part of that one.
Now, if somebody else should choose to come to one of the meetings for that, how is that handled if we
We would
end up
just
with
have to
three?
post it 48 hours beforehand and treat it like it was a regular board function, board meeting, and we'd have to, adhere to the Open Meetings Act, take minutes and approve minutes, but yeah, that wouldn't be a problem. We just need to have a little bit forewarning so we get that 40 hours.
All right. Great. Any other suggestions, comments, conversation? All right, the next item up for discussion, videotaping of meetings. What I'd like to recommend in terms of this topic is that we return to action the policy of recording and publishing online any meetings that are open. Moving forward, we had this in place in the past, and I know it was something as a community member that I liked, because if I couldn't be involved or a part of something that was going on, I could always refer back to the tape, and we don't do that. We do it for some meetings, but not all special meetings. I'm interested in revisiting that.
Well, I'd like to just hear, what concerns are there for not having, are there any concerns that, from your perspective, Scott, about the videotaping logistically or otherwise?
Well, I dropped the ball last time when we had our organizational meeting. We did record it with an iPad, and it's online. So the organizational meeting and the last meeting of the previous board is online, and it's videotaped. It's not the same quality as when our good friend Mark back there does it. He is willingly come after hours, and he gets paid for it, but he does give up his family time, and so we would have to ask him to come to those things. I think it's great. We want to have as many people view what we're doing as possible. The only thing I'd like to say is we had a meeting last night, and there was a portion that was open, and it doesn't seem practical to have that videotaped when it was such a meaningless portion of what was being done, and to pay Mark to come and do 5 minutes of open session, I think it doesn't seem to make sense for me. So the ones that have a little bit more meat that the public would be interested in seeing, I would say yes, let's just videotape them all.
Okay. And I don't disagree with that, having been at that meeting yesterday and knowing that that portion would have been useless, and I wouldn't have watched that either. But if there's to be anything that we anticipate happening, that should be on the record. I think we need to make sure that it happens.
We will do that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. 17.512, Board of Education Policy, first reading.
So I sent you information about this. Most of these are really minor changes based upon laws that were changed. Some of them were a result of press, which is our service that we subscribe to, going over policies every 5 years to make sure that everything is up to date. They've suggested some changes because they're kind of outdated, but I didn't see anything in here that was really significant, but I think you got the summary of why they were changed. And the process for this is that we present them at the first reading, and people have a month, the public has a month to look at them and view them and see if there's anything that they'd like to have changed or adjusted. And then next meeting, if there are no changes, then we will put them for a second reading and they'll become policy. So that's the process. Does anyone have any questions about any particular policy?
No, I just had a general question. If the public would like to view them, can we direct the public on how to view them?
They are online, they're part of our board packet, and they can see them, they can access them on our website.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, citizens address the board. We'll have open time for public commentary. We will open our meeting for public comment. Please remember that this is not a dialogue between you and the board. If you have a specific issue which requires a response, Superintendent Thompson will get back to you. Please state your name and identify any group that you represent. Limit your remarks to no more than 5 minutes, please. If someone previously has articulated something with which you agree, please state that you agree rather than reiterating the entire comment. Finally, avoid comments specific to any person, student, or staff member, respecting that person's right to privacy. This is not the forum to comment on personnel issues. All right, we've got a few. Dawn Gardner? That would be me. Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Dawn Gardner. I'm a mother of a 5th grader and a 6th grader at Virginia Lake Elementary. My siblings and I also attended District 15 schools as children in the 70s and 80s. I came today to provide my input regarding the District 15's handling of students with learning disabilities. When my sister Carol was in 4th grade at Kimball Hill, her teacher, Mrs. Havel, told her that she was smart, but she was lazy. It wasn't until Carol was a sophomore at the University of Wisconsin at Whitewater that she was diagnosed with dyslexia. Mrs. Havel was right about one thing. Carol is smart, but she's definitely not lazy. I remember wondering in high school why it took her 2 to 3 times as long to do her homework as it took me. Despite her difficulties with reading, she graduated from Rolling Meadows High School and was accepted to college. Unfortunately, by the time she received her diagnosis, she was on academic probation and was so frustrated and discouraged, she chose to drop out of school rather than continue on. But that was over 30 years ago that Mrs. Havel failed to figure out why my sister was struggling. Surely with all the knowledge out there today, the teachers in District 15 are better able to identify students with dyslexia. Unfortunately, nothing has changed. I noticed early on that my youngest, Brooks, struggled with reading. When he would read to me, it was clear that he was struggling with even the most simplest of words. He qualified for reading intervention in 2nd grade and was provided services. When meeting with his teacher, reading teacher, and vice principal, I raised my concern on multiple occasions that Brooks may be dyslexic and brought to their attention that my sister was dyslexic. After all, dyslexia is hereditary. They assured me that he was not dyslexic and I should not be concerned. When he was in 3rd grade, it was determined that he no longer qualified for reading services. Despite his teacher's assurances that all was well, I continued to be concerned regarding Brooks's reading. I was made aware of the Pediatric Brain Institute at Alexian Brothers Hospital and that they provided testing services for learning disabilities. I had Brooks tested and it was determined that he, in fact, has dyslexia. When I scheduled an IEP meeting with his teacher and vice principal, I was told that despite being diagnosed with dyslexia, Brooks did not qualify for reading intervention or other services. Why? Because tests showed that his reading was average. I brought to their attention that Brooks's cognitive ability score shows that he was not meeting his intellectual and academic potential. I was advised that this didn't matter since Brooks did not score in the lower 15th percentile, the cutoff to receive services. He did not qualify for services. Not that it would have mattered if he was offered reading services, because District 15 does not train its reading specialists in research-based methods for tutoring dyslexics, such as Orton-Gillingham approach. My son will succeed despite the district's failures. For 16 months, I took him to a tutor who specializes in tutoring dyslexics. 1 hour, 2 times a week at a cost of $85 per visit. That's $170 a week, about $765 a month, a total cost of a little over $10,000. He graduated from this program 3 months ago. He was lucky. His dyslexia isn't as severe as many others. For many kids struggling with dyslexia, 2 to 3 years of specialized tutoring is needed to rewire the dyslexic brain, costing parents as much as $30,000. It is estimated that approximately 20% of the population has a language-based disability, the most common language-based disability being dyslexia. According to the district's website, there are 12,800 students in the district. Thus, it is estimated that approximately 2,560 students in the school district have a language-based disability. Moreover, according to the district's website, 20.5% of district students are English language learners. So of those approximately 2,560 students with a language-based disability, 525 are English language learners. How many of these struggling students have been identified as having a language-based disability? How many of these students are receiving services, whether provided by the school or elsewhere? Here are my suggestions to the board. Implement a program to train your teachers and administrators to recognize symptoms and warning signs of dyslexia. Instruct your teachers and administrators to tell parents who have concerns regarding their child's reading abilities that they are not qualified to make a diagnosis of dyslexia. When I raised my concerns with my child's teachers, I should never have been told that, in their opinion, he was not dyslexic. Many parents would take that opinion as a diagnosis and would not seek an additional assessment. Thankfully, with my family history of dyslexia, I knew better. Concerned parents should be provided with information regarding programs such as the Pediatric Brain Institute at Alexian Brothers Hospitals, where an assessment and diagnosis can be made. The district should administer tests that have been shown to be successful at identifying students with dyslexia. One such test, the Shaywitz Dyslexia Screen, developed by a dyslexia researcher at Yale University School of Medicine and the author of this book, was recently made available to the public through Pearson. Is administered to students in kindergarten and first grade and costs just 99 cents per student. Train the reading specialists in research-based program for dyslexia, such as those based on the Orton-Gillingham approach. Raise the requirement for qualifying for services to those testing at the 30th percentile and below. If a student is diagnosed as having a learning disability such as dyslexia but does not qualify for services because they do not score in the bottom 15 percentile, or does qualify but the district still has not trained its teachers and reading specialists in research-based programs for tutoring dyslexics, provide information to parents regarding outside organizations and tutors.
Don, your 5 minutes are up. Can you wrap it up?
I would also suggest maybe developing a fund that perhaps could be funded by donations from corporations. Tutoring is expensive, and when you have 40% low-income students, a lot of those parents aren't going to be able to afford $10,000, let alone $30,000. And so something needs to be done. So I'm just going to
Can you leave that with us so we could?
I'm going to give you, actually, I have little handouts for everyone with a bunch of websites on them, not only about dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, learning disabilities in general. This is a gift for the board. Feel free to pass it around. This is, like I said, Sally Shaywitz. She's at the Yale Center for Dyslexia at Yale School of Medicine. So as a final note, people with undiagnosed learning disabilities are at a higher risk of dropping out of high school, imprisonment, substance abuse, unemployment, and depression. I have a 17-year-old nephew who 3 years ago, on New Year's Eve, was very depressed because of his undiagnosed dysgraphia. He attempted suicide by swallowing an entire bottle of Tylenol PM. Thank God he threw it up in the middle of the night, and when his parents found him the next morning, he was taken to the hospital. Undiagnosed learning disabilities can have a severe effect on children, and they shouldn't just be ignored. Yeah. So, like I said, I have 8 copies. I apologize, but please read this, and I'll be back. Next month, I'll talk about why the gifted program should be abolished.
Thank you
very much.
Mr. Len Green.
Good evening. Good evening. Do I need to identify myself for the record? Okay, good. Just a couple of observations on some of the topics that I heard discussed earlier today. I think with reference to the board retreat, an idea I had for that, and I know you've got probably lots of stuff that annually gets done on that, either in that retreat or perhaps some in another environment, but I really would like to raise the idea of a need for a strategic plan or strategic plan update, okay, with the community involvement. Given we saw some great data earlier today on the trends in classes and the student population, and we know the demographic, economic changes in Palatine. I've been here 25 years and I've seen significant change. So I really think we need to get that going in place. And I'd also like to point out that strategy and communication are different. So the Communication Engagement Committee is doing great work, but that's not strategy. That's how to get engagement going in place. But I think strategic planning is very important for what we face as a community. Point number 2, with regard to the labour negotiations that you mentioned are underway, about to start way. Not that we need it now, but please let us know in due course how you're going to evaluate as a board what's going on in those negotiations and how you plan to report back progress to us, the community, on that, including how you will perform your due diligence or your governance oversight of what's going on there. And I'd like to suggest the theme of the maximum sharing of information as a philosophy about what's going on, because labour costs are 80% of the budget in this organisation, and it's important to understand that. Thanks. Thirdly, Mr. Connon, I really liked your idea about that equality committee. I just have one observation on it at this stage, and that is that I think we can do a certain amount of it inside District 15 about how to address the achievement gap. Everybody knows about it, and it's very easy to talk about. It's very hard to find a solution. But I think there are a lot of macro factors out there, and I think there are a lot of other organizations and players that impact the root causes of an achievement gap being created. For example, if the employment market is terrible in the area where our residents work, then the risk of having people at the lower end of the economic scale goes up, which has a correlation with the achievement gap being worsened. So I don't know that we can solve it all. I don't think we should try and boil the ocean, but I think if we're going to use that equality committee, is how do we engage with other players that have done or should be doing work on this, the village, park districts, school districts, and other villages in our area, to see that we've got something cohesive going on and we're not repeating what others have done. So just a thought on that, okay. And then finally, with reference to some of the committees, I wasn't quite clear on this, but just wanted to ask the question, for example, as many of you know, I'm a numbers person. Like District 211's Finance Committee that they hold as an open meeting, will that be emulated here? And any of the others?
Our finance meetings are open.
They are, okay, yeah. I just have,
Yes.
super, okay, thank you. All right.
Let me ask you a question in terms of that, Dr. Thompson. How does the public know when the meetings are?
They're published. The times are published.
On the website?
Yeah,
Okay.
All right. And the last request, Lisa Lucht, is that pronounced correctly?
It's Lucht.
Lucht.
Good evening. Congratulations to you all that are new board members. I'm Lisa Lucht. I have a first grader at Thomas Jefferson, and I have a little guy who will be at Thomas Jefferson in a couple of years. What I wanted to address tonight was that I would like to see how the board is going to move forward in the future. A lot of what I heard in the fall with the referendum was vote no, not this plan, this is not the right plan, we need to come up with something better for the future. But I would like to see what the board is planning to do to move forward and to make plans for the future so that all of those little kindergartners that are coming in next year and the preschoolers and little kids will have a great district going forward so that District 15 will not fall behind the surrounding districts. And I know you all asked a lot of wonderful questions tonight and you have a lot to absorb as a new board and also just a lot of information from this evening, but I think there's a lot of work going forward and I would love to see in your established goals for next year something that addresses how District 15 is going to address all of the concerns of the residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to action items. Yeah, item 17-520, the personnel report. May I have a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the May 10th, 2017 personnel report as presented, including the following recommendation. Number 1, recommendation for the termination of Martha Griffin.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I want to say I'm very excited about two people on this personnel report. One is that we're recommending that the board approve this, and there will be a new principal at Winston Campus Junior High. Jason Klein, a resident in District 15 and a longtime administrator, central office administrator, very successful in Maine Township High School and in District 21 in Wheeling, has sought out this challenge to work at Winston Campus Junior High, and we're very excited about him coming. And as I mentioned earlier, I have a colleague that's quite upset with me because I stole his communication person, but tonight Morgan Delac is in the audience, and we are very excited to have her come and help us with our two-way communication, and she's just done a phenomenal job in District 220, and I know that she's going to help us from the ground up really build a dynamic, successful communication department in District 15, so very excited about that.
Perfect. Anybody else? Roll call?
Porter?
Aye.
Kane?
Aye.
Han?
Aye.
Smolka?
Aye.
Shupai?
Aye.
Wong?
Aye.
And Reno.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Item 17-521. Yeah, may I have a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the notice of publication of public hearing on the adoption of the FY 2018 tentative budget.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Kane?
Aye.
Han?
Aye.
Smolka?
Aye.
Shupai?
Aye.
Wong?
Aye.
And Reno.
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 17-522, the bid award for Chromebooks, accessories, and services. Motion, please?
I make a motion to award the contract for the Chromebooks, accessories, and services bid 17-012, consisting of the purchase of 4,400 Chromebooks, accessories, and services to the following two vendors as recommended. The first is Riverside Technologies of Omaha, Nebraska, in the amount of $913,000 for Lenovo N23s, licensures, and extended warranties. And the second is Cyber Acoustics of Vancouver, Washington, for $92,400 for protective cases, bringing the total bid award amount to $1,005,400.
Second?
Second.
Discussion?
Just one quick question. I know in the technology budget, the 5-year budget that was there, and I know you may have brought this up the last time in front of the board, and I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but in the budget, there's a $272,000 recurring every year for the Chromebooks. Can you just describe what that would be for, at least in the estimate?
So the $272,000 that is in the budget that was prepared by the Department of Technology, services by Ms. Carol Gajewski, who's the Director of Technology Services that I've reviewed and been a part of, that $272,000 is for the refreshment or brand new purchase of one-to-one Chromebooks as fifth graders become sixth graders, and they become a part of the one-to-one initiative. Those funds are designed to give those incoming students the one-to-one Chromebooks in perpetuity. So whenever you do a one-to-one type of an initiative, you have to budget in down the road the refreshment of those new devices. It's not a one-time purchase, it's an ongoing one, with the initial purchase being higher because in this instance we're looking at 3 grade levels.
Got it. Okay. Hey, Matt, I have one other question. Oh, sorry. I noticed in the what you gave us, there was an E-rate revenue, which I assume that's coming from the federal government?
Yes, and can I invite Mr. Corey Baltemeyer up to speak directly to E-rate?
Okay. Well, he's coming up. So we anticipate that the 8th graders that are leaving are going to leave their Chromebooks, and we'll give those to the 6th graders. How does the 270 tie into that?
So there are some things that we still have to decide with respect to the one-to-one, and that is, do we give our 8th graders the option to purchase the device when they leave? We still have to explore that to determine if that's something that we want to do. So for instance, and it would be something that I would recommend, if a family participates in the optional insurance at $25 a year, all right, during the life of that Chromebook for that student. So if it was 3 years, it'd be $75. If it would be 1 year, it'd be $25. We would apply that to the depreciation value associated with that Chromebook, and then say, parent, you can elect to purchase that device for the student, in which case the device would follow the student. That's what I think we should do. We haven't gotten there yet. The $272,000 would actually be for all new kids entering into the one-to-one, and that was something that we looked at in terms of enrollment, and Carol Gajewski has assured me over and over and over again that we will be able to meet the need of kids coming in, regardless of whether or not, the devices go back and are folded into 6th grade, new kids entering in, or, if families are allowed the opportunity to purchase and move forward with the device. So that's something that we still need to work on, but I do want to point out, we are not building the airplane with respect. We're not building the airplane while we're flying it. I think that's the only open question that we have to explore with respect to the one-to-one.
So it sounds like we have an opportunity for that cost to decrease, if I'm hearing you right, either because we sell off Chromebooks and those funds go towards the purchase of new ones, or we recycle 8th graders to the 6th graders, and then it reduces the number of Chromebooks we have to purchase to own the student.
That is correct.
What is the anticipated overage cost? So if we have 1,500 6th, 7th, 8th graders coming in, will we purchase an additional 10%? Will we purchase the minimum that we need? Has that been thought through the process as to say we need this many new ones, and how many are we going to actually purchase?
Yeah, so that's something that Carol Gajewski and Dave Kieshenberg and I have discussed. Dave works in the Department of Technology Services as well. We will be purchasing a small number, maybe 10 to 20 to 25 extra devices next year, and that's a part of that 4,400 number because, and I know this is going to sound terribly morbid, and I'm sorry, sometimes devices come to us and they're dead on arrival. And so, it would be nice to be able to swap those out immediately, without having to sit and order and wait. The other thing is, with respect to our extended 2-year pilot, because this is the end of 2 years where we've been working with these devices, each of our junior high schools is going to maintain one of the carts that were used as a part of the pilot. Each junior high had 9 carts allocated to them, with the exception of Winston Campus Junior High. They had approximately 12, and we did that because of some of the complaints complexities associated with Winston campus. And so every one of those junior highs keeps one cart in reserve of 30. So there's 30 Chromebooks in each cart, and then those devices will be issued to students if they forget to bring, their Chromebook to school. Or let's say they bring their Chromebook and it's broken and we have to work through that. Or let's say they bring their Chromebook to school and it's not charged. We can look at a loaner there. At the elementary level, there's a smaller number of kids overall that are participating because it's just 6th grade as well as our kids who are grades 5 and 6 in multi-age, multi-grade classes. Best example, Willow Bend, all right, coupled with our Gifted and Talented program, which is 5-6. So there's less items in reserve there, which is why we do, want to look at least 20, I would say, 20 devices in reserve.
So the current, ones that are staying on will remain at the junior highs where they're at now, and those will be the backup for each school.
Right, one set of 30 will, and then what we've done is we've deployed the other, so using the example of 9 carts, we've kept one cart back at the junior highs for strategic reserve in case things are broken, kids don't charge. So then that means that the 8 additional carts of 30, so 240 devices per each of our junior highs, more for Winston, then got redistributed, or will be redistributed to the elementary levels. Those Chromebooks will be at the beginning of next year, 2 years old. We know that the average life expectancy for that device in a shared environment is approximately 5 years. And what we've done is we've looked at elementary schools and then we've distributed those carts based on enrollment so that the buildings that are larger in enrollment, like a Lincoln Elementary School, will be receiving more carts, all right, than a school like Thomas Jefferson, which is an equally important school, but it has a lower enrollment threshold.
The 5-year obsolescence, is that based on them getting beat up and used, or are we anticipating technology obsolescence in 5 years? Do you have an idea of the technology side?
I think it's both, but what we did is, in terms of looking at life expectancy, we went right to Google, and we looked at the manufacturers, and that is all public domain information with respect to that 5-year component. So, and really, you not only are dealing with obsolescence, but you're also dealing with the Google in terms of pushing updates out to devices. They'll stop pushing updates to devices past that 5 years. And so that's part of it. I can provide more of that information at a later time and or by request.
Corey, you want to tell us about E-rate?
Did you have a specific question, or did you just want to know generally about? Well, I was taking a look at it, and a couple things. First thing was I saw that it looks like in 2017 we're supposed to be getting over $900,000, and I'm wondering, how do we get the money, and then how does the money need to be applied? Like, are there rules to how the money is being applied? Is it being applied to these Chromebooks, or is it being applied to internet services for people that are low income, or how does that all work?
Right.
Okay. Well, first, in regards to the spike that you see, I believe Matt had a graph in there that showed the last 5 years and what we think for the next 3. 2 years ago, the E-rate program changed in that historically it had been a reimbursement based upon services, particularly phone and internet. They decided 2 years ago that the best use of their resources, since this is a program that the more low-income students you have, the higher reimbursement percentage you get, that they would phase out the voice services. So after this school year, we'll no longer get reimbursed for our cell phone or our landline service. And then in substitute, they would take that pot of money and then put it towards what they call like infrastructure. So like in our case, routers, switches. And so in our case, we get about $90 per student to use over a 5-year period. And in that spike, primarily the most of that money that we got during the current school year, we were able to do a network refresh that cost about somewhere between 1.4 and 1.5 million, and we got close to 800,000 back on that project. So we've got a little bit left in our 5-year window, and then
another 3 years, that window will reset and we'll get another pot of money. The pot of money for a district our size is in the neighborhood of $1 million. The other portion of the E-rate services that we get reimbursed for is just our internet connection. And our district gets reimbursed at a 60% clip. So as far as applying it towards Chromebooks or anything, basically the way it works is, we spend money on the internet, we get 60% back, and after that, any obligation's done.
Okay.
So E-rate is basically an additional revenue stream to the district to offset costs associated with technology, because we do know that there's a degree of sticker shock with respect to, what it is that we need to do to provide our kids with the highest quality of education, with innovative technology, as well as giving our teachers the same so that they can meet the needs of kids. So it does offset a portion of what it is that was provided to you in terms of that 5-year anticipated technology forecasted budget.
So looking at these numbers, how it spiked in 2017, is that, like you said, every 5 years that you'll see a spike?
Yeah, so after this year, we'll have 3 more years where we'll probably only have about 200,000 left, but then again, we may not even use it because it has to be used on network infrastructure. So come 2021, our next 5-year window can start. Doesn't necessarily mean right away we're going to spend it. Since I've been here, our technology staff has done a good job of trying to get all of our technology to last as long as possible. So something that may have a normal life of 5, maybe they can stretch it to 7 or 8. So I think once we hit that next 5-year window, that would probably be the next time we would potentially see a spike if we had a need to replace or upgrade our network.
Okay. Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks, Corey.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Hunt,
Aye.
Smolka,
Aye.
Chupai,
Aye.
Wong,
Aye.
Iannarino,
Aye.
Porter,
Aye.
Kane.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item, 17-523. May I have a motion for the bid award for Project Lead the Way?
I make a motion to award the contract for the project Lead the Way Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math STEM Computers and Optional Monitors and Warranties 17-017, consisting of the purchase of 150 STEM lab computers to Ace Computers, Elko Village, Illinois, for a total bid award amount of $176,073 as recommended. With the purchase, Ace Computers is providing a 5-year warranty on parts and labor and on-site service next business day.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Smolka,
Aye.
Chupai,
Aye.
Wong,
Aye.
Iannarino,
Aye.
Porter,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Hunt.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 17-524. May I have a motion for the bid award for laser bond paper, please?
Make a motion to award the contract for the laser bond paper bid 17-020 to Contact Paper Group, Uniontown, Ohio, for a total bid award amount of $105,600 as recommended.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Chupai,
Aye.
Wong,
Aye.
Iannarino,
Aye.
Porter,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Hunt,
Aye.
Smolka.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 17-525. May I have a motion for the bid award for electronic communication and clock network, please?
I make a motion to award the contract for the electronic communications and clock network bid 17-021 to ITR Systems, Downers Grove, Illinois, for a total amount of $70,780 as recommended.
Second.
That's
a lot.
That's a lot of money.
It's a big clock. Discussion? Roll call?
Wong,
Aye.
Iannarino,
Aye.
Porter,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Hunt,
Aye.
Smolka,
Aye.
Chupai.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 17-526. May I have a motion for the bid award for milk?
I make a motion to award the contract for the milk bid 17-024 to Bob's Dairy Service, Franklin Park, Illinois, for a 1-year contract with an annual renewal option for up to 4 additional years for an estimated annual amount of $245,364.17 as recommended.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Panarino,
Aye.
Porter,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Khan,
Aye.
Smolka,
Aye.
Shuhai,
Aye.
Wong.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 17-530, the consent calendar. Would anyone like to remove anything from the consent calendar? May I have a motion to approve the consent calendar, please?
Make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? No discussion? We just consented and that's all there is to it? That's no fun.
Well, not discussion, but the one thing I did want to point out is the item R, the learning A to Z. The only concern I had there was just making sure that we factor that in as we're looking at maybe the equality committee or something else about encouraging utilization. It seems like a lot of what the benefit of that program would be is supplemental after hours where devices and connectivity may not be present. It's going to be targeted at the younger ages, which will be below the one-to-one Chromebook. So just finding additional ways to help leverage tools like that to work towards that achievement gap.
Okay.
Agreed. No discussion, roll call.
Porter,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Khan,
Aye.
Smolka,
Aye.
Shuhai,
Aye.
Wong,
Aye.
Panarino.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 9, correspondence. Dr. Thompson?
We have had some correspondence during the last period between April 7th and May 4th. On April 4th, a request was received from Dua LD, reporter of the Chicago Tribune. The extension notice was sent on April 11th for this response. The response was sent on April 18th, 2017. On April 7th, a request received from John Bullman, Fort Worth, Texas. An extension notice was sent on April 13th. The response to this request was sent on April 19th. On April 13th, a request received from Megan Haddad, Palatine, Illinois. The response to this request was sent on April 20th. On April 7th, a request was received from Jean Taylor, I didn't bring my glasses, Banker, thank you. Rolling Meadows, Illinois. This response to this request was sent on April 21st. On April 21st, a request was received from Jim Davis, Palatine, Illinois. The response to this request was sent on April 27th. On April 21st, a request was received from Len Green, Palatine, Illinois. The response to this request was sent on April 27th. On April 21st, a request was received from Megan Haddad, Palatine, Illinois. The response to this request was sent on April 27th. April 21st, a request was received from Michael Thorson, Palatine, Illinois. The response to this request was sent on April 27th. April 24th, 2 requests were received from Megan Haddad, Palatine, Illinois. The response to those requests were sent on April 27th. On April 21st, a request was received from Len Green, Palatine, Illinois. An extension notice was sent on April 28th, and the response to this request is still pending. April 7th and April 23rd, a request was received from Jean Taylor Banker, Rolling Meadows, Illinois. An extension notice and a request for further clarification was sent on May 1st. The response to this request is still pending. On April 19th, a request was received from Zach Hansen, North America Corporation. The response to this request is sent on April 24th. On April 25th, the request was received from Megan Haddad, Palatine, Illinois. The response to this request was sent on May 2nd. And on May 3rd, a request was received from Matthew Gugala, Workforce Development, Carroll Street, Illinois. The response to this request is pending. We did receive one check from developers for impact fees in the amount of $10,348.53 from the Village of Palatine.
Great, thank you. Next topic, executive session. I believe that we covered what we needed to cover in executive session yesterday. If anybody feels differently, please let me know. If not, we're going to skip the executive session. Anybody? No? All right. Past that, I think we're done. So may I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.